she would volunteer to take charge of her baby sister, who was 2 years her junior, by leading her everywhere by the hand. When she was 5, she started to attend Geekling Elementary, and the moment she started school, she showed signs of being a good student. When she was in 1st grade, she made the honor roll and did so the rest of her time at Geekling Elementary. In 4th grade, she started to practice the violin. She practiced every night because she wanted to be good at everything she did. By the time she reached 8th grade, she had played in several school concerts. When she was in 5th grade, her science project won honors all the way to state level. I hate reading someone else's words, I always mess them up. She also started to run track. She didn't join to compete, she just liked to run to stay in shape. She took an active part in a number of school activities, to include helping to host a number of after-school ones. At home, her interests and holiday spirit continued well into her adulthood. Immediately after Thanksgiving, she would insist to her father that he and her sister and she put up and decorate the Christmas tree, while her mother made out the gift tags. She and her sister would then decorate the entire house, to include the fireplace, stairwell, and their bedrooms. On the mornings of the parents' wedding anniversaries, Christmas, and Thanksgiving, she and her sister would cook breakfast for their parents and sat a festive table, to include napkins, hot chocolate, and candles. Once her sister learned to play the flute, it became a family tradition for the two of them to serenade their parents with an appropriate song as they ate. She played the violin while the sister played the flute. To further show her willing and love she had for her family, she started another family tradition by getting up early every Saturday morning and cooking a huge breakfast for the entire Johnson family and her aunt. Lavina seemed to have a love for everything and everyone that she came in contact with. When she was in 5th grade, she seemed to enjoy taking roles in political issues. She loved animals and didn't like to hear about them being killed, so she heard of and joined People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, or PETA. She became a dues-paying member at the age of 11. From there, she joined VEGA, which is my computer just froze up, Vegetarian Economy and Green Agriculture. She became a vegetarian and stayed that way for the rest of her life. She attended Hazelwood Junior High School, and she was involved in a number of school activities. She received the DARE Certificate of Achievement Award, Student Citizenship Club member. She also obtained a reputation for being a dependable student. She learned to play the violin really well and participated in a number of senior high school concerts. In lieu of being well liked by students and teachers, she was on the honor roll both years and named to the Hawks Sigma Cum Laude Club. By the time Lavina attended high school, she had a good reputation as being friendly and having only good things to say about everyone she knew. People who knew her knew that she came from a really close family because all of her siblings attended the same high school. She was always seen attending high school sporting events with her father and other school activities with her mother, father, and younger sister. She also matured to the point that she knew what she wanted to do with her life. She wanted to go to college, and she prepared herself by being on the honor roll the entire time she was in high school. She also had 3 major goals for her life: attend college and major in performing arts to become a movie producer. Her father has written several fiction novels, and her goal was to one day see that his books were made into movies. Her oldest brother has written over 30 songs. Her brother, Jermaine, is attempting to form a music company, and she and her younger sister, Lakeisha, talked about graduating from college and forming a family music and movie company to showcase their family's talents to the entire world. Lavina was a true patriot, and she wanted to make a difference in the objections to the idea. She convinced them she'd be doing something good for her country while traveling and earning her own money for school. The one thing her family knew about her and she was known for was accomplishing what she set out to do, so they apprehensively supported her decision to enter the army. In May of 2004, she graduated Hazelwood Senior High, an honor roll student with 2 B's and the rest all A's her senior year. That September, instead of enrolling in college, she enlisted in the army. She attended basic training at Fort Jackson in South Carolina for 8 weeks, and at her graduation exercise, her parents were told by her drill sergeants they could tell she was raised in a disciplined home because she was mentally tough. She was often used as a role model to both female and male soldiers. Her dad goes on to talk about all the awards that she was granted in the army after she passed away. I'm not going to tell you all of those. There are many, but I think that they granted most of them to her because she passed while in the army. Not to say that she doesn't deserve them in any way. Don't come at me, but I'll tell you more about why I think that later. So this brings us to May of 2005. Lavina was assigned to the 121 Corps Support Battalion, and she was deployed to Iraq. Lavina became a private first class. She worked in communications and rode home frequently to update her parents on her experiences. On July 17th, she called her parents with the good news that she would be coming home in time for Christmas, and that she was looking so forward to spending time with everyone and decorating the tree with her father and sister. Her mother recalls her being her absolute normal, jubilant self during this conversation. But a couple days after this phone call, the Johnson family get a knock on their door. It's a soldier, and he tells them that Lavina has died. And he even alludes that she has taken her own life, which really struck her family as unusual. Remember, they had just talked to her, and she was excited about coming home. Nothing seemed to have warranted her committing suicide. As more information comes in about Lavina's death, her parents started to get a clearer picture of what happened on that day. She got off work between 4 and 5 p.m. as usual, but she never made it to her physical training appointment. I don't know what time that appointment was supposed to be, but the Army claims that Lavina met up with a male soldier that she hung out with for approximately 4 hours in his room. And then they both went separate ways. No, they both went shopping to pick up supplies, and then they went separate ways. She got some M&Ms and some other random stuff. At 1:20 a.m., Lavina was found in her contractor's tent in a pool of blood, face down, with her hand over her face. Next to her body was an M16 rifle, some scattered papers, a Bible, some M&Ms, and some Marlboro lights. There was a trail of blood leading from the tent, and the actual tent itself was burning. Now, this is not Lavina's tent. This is not Lavina's room. And so, of course, as you'd expect, military investigators, I speak English, honest, quickly launch an investigation into Private Johnson's death. They claim that she was upset because her boyfriend of 2 months had broken up with her via email, and they kind of allege that she printed them out, put them in her pocket, slung her M16 over her shoulder, went to buy M&Ms and a 6-pack of soda with her friend, and they claim that these 2 soldiers returned to the barracks, but then Private Johnson or Lavina left alone again. She made her way to this tent belonging to a military contractor. Once she was in the tent, the military says that she found a can of aerosol, lit the breakup emails on fire, and then set the entire tent on fire. According to military investigators, she then, very distraught, 5'1" tall, was not recovered. The military concluded its investigation and issued an official cause of death. PFC LaVena Johnson committed suicide. Case closed. Or so they thought. The Army recommended that the family have a closed casket funeral, but the Johnson family decided against it. And this is where they started to see some pretty powerful discrepancies in the Army story. For instance, Lavina's nose looked as though it had been broken, and her lips had cuts on them. The only sign of a gunshot wound was a small bullet hole to the left side of her head near her temple. But the Army told them that she had shot herself in the mouth. The injury wound also looked like it came from a 9mm, not an M16 rifle. Lavina's gloves had been glued onto her hands, which was not normal protocol. Now, Lavina's dad starts pushing, and he wants to know everything. He gets his hands on the autopsy report months later, and he discovers some more suspicious information. They didn't do a rape kit. They did not do fingernail scrapings. It was evident by the medical examiner's report. They already determined the cause of death before he even examined Lavina. The Army said they didn't do a rape kit because it didn't look like there was any evidence of a struggle. Oh, okay, we're gonna get back to that. Even though there was no suicide note, no recovered bullet, no significant gunshot residue on Lavina's hands, and a trail of blood outside the tent, and the M16 was found in the tent with her. This supposed weapon, it was not the one that was military issued to Private First Class Johnson. It was someone else's. The Army still claimed that she was depressed and unstable and said, no, it's a suicide. Okay. The physical evidence and forensic reports, together with the witness statements, crime scene photos, military autopsy, and subsequent independent autopsy, paint a very different picture of Private Johnson's death. If she did not kill herself, which I don't think she did, then she was murdered, and let me tell you why. The military was doing everything they could to cover it up. Dr. Johnson wouldn't have none of it. He demanded everything. He filed a Freedom of Information request and enlisted the assistance of local legislators. I believe he even had a congressman helping him out. He formed his own investigative team. He enlisted the help of family members who studied criminal science, and for years they have pored over this evidence, trying to prove something to someone. They studied the photographs, they analyzed the witness statements, and Dr. Johnson doesn't mince words. He believes Lavina was raped and murdered, and her death was covered up. Dr. Johnson says that he had to find immense strength to look at the pictures of the autopsy photos of his daughter and to examine her body before her funeral. I cannot imagine the strength of will that took. In 2007, he made another difficult decision. He had her exhumed, and he had another autopsy performed, but it was inconclusive. But it did find a couple things. The military's autopsy showed Private Johnson sustained only non-serious injuries prior to her death, like a busted lip, some broken teeth, and some scratch marks on her neck. Well, if she has a busted lip and broken teeth, you think that's from the gunshot? I don't. Okay, whatever. The crime scene photos of Private Johnson's body, the morgue x-rays, and the independent autopsies suggest that a much more serious struggle took place. Private Johnson had bruises and scratches on the upper part of her body. She even had teeth marks. She appeared to have been badly beaten before her life was taken. She had x-rays done in the morgue, and it showed that she suffered a broken nose, but they fixed it with plastic surgery post-mortem, and a broken neck. There also, and this was absolutely conclusion, he says her commanding officer described her as happy and healthy. He contends that her arms were too short, that there is no way she could have shot herself with her own M16, and that the wound in her head was too small to have been made by the M16. He says that the pictures tell him Lavina has been beaten. There was no suicide note. Again, there's no way that she didn't leave a note, at least. And what's more, this trail of blood outside the tent, the back of Private Johnson's clothes had debris on them, indicating that she had been dragged into the tent after a violent attack, but prior to the tent being set on fire. The right side of Lavina Johnson's back and her right hand had been burned, apparently from a flammable liquid that had been poured on her and then lit. Despite bruises, scratches, and teeth marks on her body, together with the broken nose, fractured neck, and burns, Private Johnson was completely dressed in the burning tent. Additionally, forensic evidence severely undermines the military suicide theory. Private Johnson's fingerprints were not on this M16 that she supposedly used to kill herself. No gunshot residue on her hands, and again, given her 5'1" height, it would have been nearly impossible for her to put the barrel of the M16 in her mouth and pull the trigger. Although, she could have used one of her toes to pull the trigger, but her shoes were still on her feet in the crime scene photos. Private Johnson's fingerprints were not on the matches, the aerosol, or any of the other items found inside the tent. And what's more, there was a footprint found inside the tent that was never identified. Military investigators conducted no DNA testing on this weapon to determine whether she touched it or its magazine, or whether she pulled the trigger at all. This is really important because she had 2 small cuts on her right thumb, and these cuts would have produced enough secretions of DNA for it to be found on the gun, on the magazine, and the trigger. If not, certainly the alleged act of Private Johnson putting her mouth on the barrel of the gun would have put enough DNA on the gun for testing. But again, the military did not conduct DNA testing on the M16. There were no fingerprints of any kind on the M16 rifle, not even the fingerprints of the first responder who admitted to moving the M16 when he or she, they don't reveal it, discovered the body. This absence of fingerprints strongly suggests that the M16 had been wiped off after the discovery of Private Johnson's body. In January of 2011, a non-for-profit cold case investigation research institute began looking into the case, but after 3 years, the group said they found no evidence that could counter the military's determination that she had killed herself. There was nothing about the case that we could go back to the army and say, you need to look at this. We didn't have anything new. We didn't have anything that suggested wrongdoing. Are you kidding me? Lavina was the first black soldier to die while serving in Iraq. First black woman soldier to die while serving in Iraq. Lavina Lynn Johnson was the first female soldier from Missouri to die in Iraq. She died just days before her 20th birthday in 2005, 1 year after graduating from high school. I found this article by a man named Donald Watkins, and I'm going to read you part of it now because I think that it kind of gives us a pretty good theory, and he reveals a couple his room, they went to buy M&Ms and soda, and after purchasing these items, they returned to the barracks. Shortly after midnight, Private Johnson left again, but this time she was alone. She made her way to a tent on base belonging to this military contractor. Why? There, she inadvertently encountered the commander and his lover. They were engaged in the very romance that this commander had been told he was supposed to stop. Startled, afraid, and desperate, this commander snapped. He became violent towards Private Johnson, who did not fight back because she was as shocked as he was. During his assault on Private Johnson, the commander knocked some of her teeth backwards, broke her nose, broke her neck, and inflicted other injuries on her body. The commander then drug her into the tent, where he staged the crime scene to look like two criminal events, a rape and a suicide. At some point, Private Johnson's pants and underwear were pulled down, and again, that substance was poured in her vaginal area. This made it appear that she had been raped, and the rapist attempted to destroy his DNA. Her underwear and pants were then pulled back up. What appeared to be this man's footprint was found at the scene. However, they classified it as unidentified. Strangely, the military's investigative file does not explain the trail of blood, the debris on the back of her clothes, her broken nose, fractured neck, how she, with a fractured neck, had the mobility to commit suicide by sticking this rifle in her mouth, or why the top and back of Private Johnson's head was still intact. The crime scene in this case was staged to make it look like Private Johnson had committed suicide. The M16 was carefully arranged across her body. A spent shell casing was placed near her body. The M16 bullet was never located because that weapon was not fired inside the tent. Instead, the commander fired one shot from his 9mm pistol into the top left side of Private Johnson's head, execution style. The bullet traveled through the brain, down the left side of her head, and lodged in her tongue. The commander then lit a fire in the tent before leaving the scene. Now, this series of events is supported by the military's own records and explains how and why a battered soldier with a fractured neck was shot in the top of her head, why there were no discernible fingerprints on the M16, why there was no gunpowder found on Private Johnson's hands, why there was no bullet, even though the empty M16 shell casing was there, why the M16 was planted at the scene was not the one issued to Private Johnson, and this fact that I only read here, why Private Johnson's tongue was removed during the military autopsy without any reference to its removal, why the military stonewalled the release of the investigatory records on Private Johnson's murder, and why the commander was unexpectedly fired from his command position to the shock and surprise of fellow officers and friends at the time. This man believes that the bullet lodged in her tongue, and that's why the military removed it. Now, I do have some experience at being a military spouse, and I know that some of the things that I do are absolutely crazy, but I never thought that they would cover up a murder. But when I listen to this Watkins guy explain it, it makes so much sense to me. That is exactly what I believe they would do. This poor girl was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, I think. And I do think they're covering it up. I don't think that she committed suicide. But it makes me so angry. You know, you join the military and you sacrifice your life. Not literally, but you do. They control everything that you do. Everything. And it doesn't matter how many years you put in or how much service you put in or if you carry bags heavier than the next guy. They don't care. You are just another body. Now, that being said, I 100%, bless these people that are doing this. He was crazy, but he was my ex, and I watched him go through You think